What is up, everyone? DSP here, and I've just finished a full day of streaming Mafia the Old Country, and all day long, people kept coming by my stream asking me, after 5 hours of gameplay, what do I think about the game? So I'm just going to make a very brief video right now to explain my initial impressions. Now, I say initial impressions, but for the record, the reports are that you can beat Mafia the Old Country in around 8 hours if you just kind of rush through it. Most people are taking between 10 to 15 hours, depending on how much content you decide to do. Apparently, there are a few side missions and collectibles and things that you can search for. So when I say I'm 5.5 hours in or 5 hours in and I'm giving you initial impressions, it very well may be that I'm like a third or halfway through the game. I don't know. Okay. So here's the deal. First off, I've heard a lot of reports about bugs and issues. I haven't seen many of those at all. I am playing on the PC version of the game. Everything is maxed, and I'm using DLSS because I have an NVIDIA graphics card, so I've got it on the performance high mode and doing that. Pretty beautiful visuals. I'm playing at 4K resolution, and it's running at a pretty solid between like 60 to 90 frames per second from what I can tell. So I don't know where people are saying there's bugs and graphical issues. I haven't really seen them. In fact, I would argue the visuals are some of the most best things about the game. Like visually impressive, a lot of detail, tons of great lighting. The shadows are really detailed. It looks very cinematic. The entire game is created in a cinematic method so that it kind of looks like you're in an interactive mafia movie, based over in the old country of Italy. And it works. It really does. Like, if you're into that, if you liked movies like The Godfather and stuff like that, this is gonna be up your alley. It really does feel like showing how things were in the early 1900s over in Italy. Um, and the plot itself is pretty interesting. I don't wanna spoil it, but basically the first 2 hours of the game are pure plot, like almost no gameplay elements at all. So you have to be ready for that. But once the game throws you into its gameplay of working for the mob, or I should say the mafia, because I don't think they called them the mob in the old country. Um, and doing things such as shaking people down for their protection money, or trying to protect certain VIPs who are important to your group, getting revenge on certain people who have messed with you, car chases, shootouts, all kinds of stealth missions as well. It feels pretty darn good. I would say that the gameplay elements are sound. Pretty easy, except for one thing. I would say the stealth in the game is very reminiscent of Hitman or shoot, maybe even games from back in the day like Splinter Cell. You're sneaking around, you're taking a guy out from behind, you got to put him inside of a box so that no one can find the body and alert all the other guards. Um, or you could do stealth takedowns, or you can use the knife, and there's a knife that will wear out after certain uses, so you have to use a whetstone to sharpen it, and then you can use that knife to also open boxes, so this is how you get, like, additional currency. There's collectibles you can find that give you special abilities like, oh, your knife is sharpens faster, or you can get more money when you collect money, you get bonus and stuff like that. The gunplay. This is probably the one challenging thing about the game. Yeah, the gunplay is similar to previous Mafias or even Grand Theft Auto, where it's cover based and you come out of cover and you shoot. But the gunplay is not super simple. You can't just instantly fire and kill everyone. You have to wait and aim, and then the targeting actually gets smaller, and you have to wait for it to get to that sweet spot before you fire. And a lot of the times, one shot isn't enough to kill the enemy. So you have to fire and wait. Sometimes you'll have to fire, go back behind cover, pop back out, wait again, and then fire. It is challenging, and enemies take a lot of health. I'm only playing on normal difficulty, and I'm losing my entire health bar after getting shot like 1 to 2 times, and I gotta heal. So it is pretty challenging in that regard. I'd say the firefights are the most challenging part of the game so far. Um, again, it's hard because I don't wanna spoil the plot, but I'll just say, 4.5, 5 hours in, there's some really cliche elements, but there's also some things that aren't as cliche. There's some interesting character writing. You're getting to know characters a little better. There's, some betrayals and stuff. It's pretty good. I would say so far, I really, really like it. But the one thing I gotta say is you've got to be accepting of the fact that the game is pretty much all story. And I mean it. There's in the 5 hours I've played, there's been little to no side content. There was one opportunity for me to explore the map and maybe grab a few collectibles. Outside of that, it's just story mission, story mission, story mission, story mission, pretty much nonstop story missions. So You got to be ready for that. If you're not, you're probably going to be disappointed by the game. This is not some game from the last era where everything was a giant open world with a bunch of grindy collectathon content, fighting off hordes of enemies and taking over bases and doing all of that. None of that exists in this game. It's just story, so be prepared for that. But after Mafia 3 and how much padding content that game had, I'm willing to bet a lot of people are going to be happy with the fact that this game doesn't have that kind of filler content and went back to the original formula of Mafia 1 and 2. But I definitely noticed a distinct reaction today. My audience was almost completely split down the middle. Some people were like, wow, this is interesting. I like it. And others were like, wow, this is boring. Why? Because there's a lot of cutscenes. There's a lot of talking. This is the story. People can't handle that. Well, where's all the action? I don't understand. Why aren't you killing 400 waves of enemies? Why aren't you constantly blowing things up? Not to say that the game doesn't have action. Tonight, there was this epic sequence. It felt like Indiana Jones. You're driving a car, you're shooting enemies, you're jumping out of the car into things, beating people up. I was like, you know what this reminds me of? Uncharted. And we haven't had a game like Uncharted in a very long time. So it actually felt like a throwback and it felt kind of refreshing to have that adventure kind of gameplay again. So gunplay, stealth, and these big epic, high production value kind of scenes. If that's what you're looking for, then this game's going to be right up your alley, especially if you like Mafia plot lines. But if you're looking for a game that's going to have tons of value, bang for your buck, you're probably not going to get it. This game will be over sooner than you think. And then you'll be like, wow, I just spent $50 because that is the price tag of the game right now. It's $50, USD, I should say. Is that enough for you to play 10, 15 hours? Or are you looking for something more? I think a lot of people in the last generation of consoles and platforms have been programmed to think that if the game's not 20, 30, 40 hours long, it's ripoff. That's not really the case. Back in the day, games didn't always used to be insanely lengthy, but people still liked them. I think that there's a market for that, but people need to know ahead of time what they're getting into so they don't feel like they're getting bait and switched. In this case, yeah, you're not going to get a ton of content out of the game, but the game is good for what it is. And if you're looking for story, that's where this game is exceeding for me or excelling for me. So initially, 5 hours in, I like it. I can't wait to play more. But the funny part about it is, like I said, my audience is torn. Some of them really like it and some of them don't. I tell you this, I'm not going to play it for a whole day straight. Again, I'll probably do a shorter stream next time. That way people don't get tired of it or say, oh, it's too much of the same. It's just so much story. So anyway, thanks for watching my initial impressions on Mafia the Old Country. I like it and I'm looking forward to more next time. But be ready for story and be ready for a shorter game. Peace out. See you later.